On Monday night, US talk show host Jimmy Kimmel went on air and did what almost everybody else in the media was doing, discussing the assassination of Charlie Kirk, allegedly by 22-year-old Utah resident Tyler Robinson. Here's what Kimmel said.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Now, look, there are maybe reasons to criticize Kimmel there. After all, he's trying to make an assessment of Tyler Robinson's political alliances based on the slimmest of evidence, which is exactly what he's accusing the administration of doing. The administration is obviously weaponizing things in various ways. And of course, what Kimmel wants to say is that Robinson's family background points to someone from within Charlie Kirk's own camp. As I said, what he's doing is not really that different from what US President Donald Trump and many of his proxies did immediately after Kirk's killing. This was Trump on Monday.
It looks like he became radicalized over the internet. And it seems like he has wonderful parents, brought in a wonderful neighborhood, smart guy, great boards, great marks, great student. And then something happened to him over a fairly short period of time. It looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left. I have a lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected.
I mean, the actual facts are that the evidence of a clear political allegiance on either side is pretty slim. So you've got those like Kimmel, who might point to Robinson's MAGA family background and his documented use of guns, and others have linked him to the extreme far-right figure Nick Fuentes based on the memes he's alleged to have etched on the bullet casings used in Robinson's killing. And the evidence on the side of Trump is that Robinson appears to have been in a romantic relationship with someone who was trans, his roommate, while his mother described him as having become, quote, more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. Dalia, I just wanted to bring you in here quickly because we'll get onto the consequences, the crazy consequences for Jimmy Kimmel of what he said on the show, which didn't seem any different from what many people have been saying, and it's very scary, those consequences. But I just wanted to ask you about this race to categorize Tyler Robinson as being, part of the right or part of the left. It all seems to be really based on quite tenuous, things or beliefs he might have had. So, for example, the idea that he might have been on the left because he had taken up an interest in LGBT rights. I mean, there are plenty of Republicans or people on the right who've got gay kids who also might want rights for their kids, but who also, are anti-abortion and pro-gun and whatever. Just like there may be plenty of people on the right on the left rather, who have left-wing views in some respects and right-wing views in other respects. I guess what I'm asking about is, I sometimes wonder that I'm a bit politics brained, so I'm very keen to categorize people into these, maybe three categories, sort of the left, the right, the center. But the fact is that, most Americans describe themselves as moderates and will swing from one party to another in many elections. It's also the case that, individuals don't care about politics as much as we do. Probably, it may well be that there are more Americans who care about, the next Marvel franchise than there are who care about the nitty-gritty of political party life or political activism. Do you think we miss something about the kind of fine detail and sort of contradictions of actual human beings in the world who may actually just have a lot of overlapping views when we try to categorize people in these ways?
Yeah, I mean, those of us who do politics for work think a lot a lot about, building a cohesive political identity or set of political beliefs. And we think about how our beliefs relate to one another and what is the broader theoretical framework that holds all of these different opinions together. But for the vast majority of people, understandably, because, politics is not their day job, their politics is not necessarily legible as a spectrum of left to right in the way that it might be for you and me, but is actually more like a kind of scribble or a knot, as it were. For most of us, our parents or our siblings, oftentimes we'll find that we'll really agree with them on some things and then really disagree with them on other things. And to us, the connection, to us, that doesn't look like a cohesive politics, but to them, for whatever reason, it does feel like one. And most people do not experience politics in the way that those of us who do politics for a living do experience it. I mean, last week, I think it was me and Helena who were working on the show. Helena was hosting, and I was co-hosting. And I made a point to say that it's very important that, particularly given the kind of shock and heightened sense of vigilance that many people were experiencing, the heightened sense of emotions that many people were experiencing, that it was really important that we don't try to project onto this situation our own ideas of what this might be, because it wasn't clear. And I condemned people in power, particularly from the right, who immediately jumped on the shock that people were feeling to basically use this as a reason to just crush all left speech or all speech that is not a specific kind of right-wing speech. And we see that with, Donald Trump saying there, the left has a lot of problems, which, given what's happened this morning, I don't even necessarily disagree. But him saying, the left has a lot of problems, and he says, and they are protected, and they should not be protected. Now, what does he mean by that? Does he mean that people with left-wing ideas shouldn't be protected by the First Amendment? Is that it? They shouldn't be protected by the freedom of political association, the freedom of political speech? Judging from his actions, that is what it seems. But now that we do know a little bit more, it's funny because I thought by this point I would have a bit of a clearer sense of what might have motivated this person to allegedly carry out the act that he carried out. But actually, the more that we know, it feels like the less it seems like this was an overtly political act. I mean, Ken Klippenstein wrote an article. He was in the Discord server that this individual was very active in, and he kind of tried to uncover what might be the thing that motivated Robinson to allegedly carry out this attack. And I left that being none the wiser. It seemed that all that Ken Klippenstein got from there was a sense that, he was very much immersed in a kind of nihilistic, deep meme subculture. Now, did that have anything to do with it? I don't know, but you cannot say that because he has become more pro-gay, whatever that means, i.e. maybe less homophobic, or that he has a trans partner, that necessarily means that there is a cohesive set of political ideas that go along with that. What we do know, and we still don't know, because I think if this person wanted there to be a very clear message from what he did, he would have left a manifesto, he would have left a note. We haven't seen that yet. Maybe there is one, but we can't say for sure as the public that has been found. What we do know, however, is that this was not someone who was part of an organized left organization. He was not part of an organized left movement. And so the fact that they are still trying to pin this on a broader left politics shows that they are much less concerned with finding out actually what led this individual to take this violent act, and more concerned with using this as an opportunity to crack down on particular kinds of speech that they don't agree with. And by they, it's pretty obvious who I mean.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out as well that, many more people, individuals, not states and things, but individuals, many more individuals kill for love or kind of warped conception of love than they do for politics. And obviously in Robinson's messages to his partner, he talked about how Kirk's hate had to stop. Maybe there was some impact on his partner of that for him was intolerable. I don't know. That's speculative. But yeah, as I say, people have personal motives for all kinds of things all the time, and their views are kind of independent of it. Now, in response to Kimmel's comments on his ABC show, the comic has been suspended. Brendan Carr, a Trump appointee, is head of the Federal Communications Commission. That's the government's broadcast regulator. After Kimmel's comments, he issued a warning on right-wing political commentator Benny Johnson's podcast.
There's actions that we can take on licensed broadcasters. And frankly, I think that it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt. We are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we licensed broadcaster, are running the possibility of fines or license revocations from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion.
So that's a pretty clear threat from the head of the regulator that they'll leverage the licenses that they give to operators. So those were the people who who have the equipment to enable the broadcasts. If they don't moderate what they show in accordance with the administration's wishes. Now, Nexstar, which operates the Disney-owned ABC network that broadcasts the Kimmel show, then threatened to stop airing that show, leading ABC to say they were pulling it indefinitely. And Donald Trump seemed pretty pleased about it, posting this on Truth Social. Great news for America. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel show is cancelled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. President DJT. Pretty much actively calling for further shows to be cancelled on his whim. Trump also addressed the cancellation at a press conference in the UK today.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Dalia, I mean, I'm sure it won't be lost on you that one of the ways in which right-wing governments, previous governments in Poland, current government in Hungary, managed to take control of society, politics for quite a long time and ongoing, as I say, in Hungary, was by controlling the media. What does this look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, why should a president of the United States care about the ratings of a TV show comedian? And it's clear that his ratings were fine enough for ABC to continue airing his show until he said something that pissed off a particular political faction. The part of this story that is not being talked about as much is the fact that one of the biggest broadcasting affiliates of ABC is this organization called Sinclair Broadcasting Group. And Sinclair Broadcasting Group have released a statement today saying that Jimmy Kimmel has to apologize for his comments, which weren't actually, from what I understood, derogatory about anyone in particular. It was about, he was saying, that he doesn't think that this was a leftist political actor. That's not, it's not a particularly insane thing to say. But Sinclair Broadcasting Group is kind of a little bit like a Fox News. It's a conservative organization, a conservative company that runs local news and local programming in the US. And it's, spent a lot of time kind of quite strategically buying up local news channels. It's also very Donald Trump affiliated. Now, we have to ask the question, what does it mean when you have corporate power, state power, and media power all aligning in order to restrict what can be said on television? It's very difficult to see that as anything other than a form of authoritarianism. If this was happening in any other country that's not in Europe or North America, it would be labeled authoritarian. And it just goes to show that something that many of us have always been saying, which is that the particular version of free speech wars that the far right and the right have been peddling has got absolutely nothing to do with the concept of free speech, which is the ability to be protected from state persecution for expressing political views or expressing particular kinds of speech. That is not something that the right are interested in. That is actually a leftist liberal principle. It was never anything to do with free speech. The whole free speech Trojan horse was in fact about saying that we need to be able to freely and not just freely, but we have to be able to push particular ideas on the public that they don't organically find compelling, but because we cannot win people over to these views on the basis of their own merit or their own conviction. We have to appeal to a broader kind of abstract principle as an excuse for having particular viewpoints pushed. That has always been what the free speech idea is about. It's about mainstreaming and forcibly mainstreaming ideas and opinions that actually are on the quite fringe right. And it has been a concerted effort by media as well as corporate power in order to normalize and mainstream particular kinds of speech that otherwise beforehand has been considered to be unpopular or not particularly tasteful, or not something that most people want to associate themselves with. Now, obviously, Jimmy Kimmel is making the headline news at the moment because he probably is not seen to be a particular political agitator. And so the idea that he would be cut out of the media, cut off from his own show because he said something that was not pleasing to the president feels very controversial. But I also think it's important to bring up that today a judge in the US ordered that Mahmoud Khalil, who was the Columbia student who was detained in ICE for no reason other than the fact that he was a very effective negotiator with Columbia University on behalf of the student body who was protesting a genocide. He was thrown into ICE detention, and now a judge has ordered for him to be deported to Syria or Algeria, two countries with whom Mahmoud Khalil has absolutely no relationship to. And of course, the judge has said that this is because of, discrepancies or errors with his asylum application. But we know that there is no coincidence that the state has thrown all of its might behind destroying Mahmoud Khalil, splitting him away from his family, his wife, his newborn child. The only reason they have done that is because he was an effective and steadfast advocate for the Palestinian people. So yes, Jimmy Kimmel losing his show is a sign that, this alliance of corporate power, media power, and state power is beginning to coalesce into something very scary. But we are already far beyond that when it comes to particularly people who are more marginalized than someone like Jimmy Kimmel, who are not just facing losing their show, but are facing being detained and potentially deported. And that is a violation of free speech, because that is the state persecuting you on the basis of you articulating speech that you are entitled to articulate.